Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it does appear that there's another video by none other than Hex Juice herself. I like to call her, instead of the crazy cat lady, I like to call her the crazy bat lady. And what we're seeing over here is a video about why Gacha wars will never end. And this one is about that famous tweet. The tweet that divided, or in some ways, united the Gacha communities. It doesn't really matter whether Zenless Zone Zero or Wuthering Waves has better combat, let's just talk about our opinions. And so, that's what this video is going to be about, opinions. Or maybe the wording of our opinions, and how they start some wars. So with that, let's go ahead, let's get right on into it.
A long time ago, when I was in the depths of Gacha tribalism hell, I made a video that I still think about quite often. It was called Honkai Star Rail's Community is Doomed, which was definitely not inflammatory or exaggeratory at all. And it came
That's
from
sarcasm.
a very specific moment in my time as an HSR content creator. At that point, I was about 3 months out from my very well-known Dr. Ratio take, and I was super frustrated.
A brief summary of her take was that Dr. Ratio wasn't really a great character for free-to-play players because he required an exceptional amount of investment to work, really high crit rate because he has a lot of single target, big hit attacks, and, well, of course, right, he requires some specialized teammates that inflict debuffs to actually work properly, and, they've got to be built too, so that they don't get destroyed in endgame content. So from that point of view, right, I actually do agree. And obviously at this point in the game, where you have Dr. Ratio Supermax called Fei Zhao, who basically just does everything that he does but better, it's pretty clear, right? It's pretty clear that he's not that great of a unit, and the passage of time, age, has not really done him that well. So I do think she was right in her original take.
I was super frustrated. Though this video was born from that frustration with the player base, I do think a lot of parts of it have a ton of value. I was fed up with my chat, and I did a lesson about the difference between a fact and an opinion, and it's kind of become this, ongoing joke in my community, since we actually found out it was a lot harder for lots of people to tell the difference than you'd probably expect. The reason I'm telling you this is twofold. One is that while I like this video and a lot of the points that I made in it, my perspective has shifted quite a lot over time. The second is the obvious, which is that tweets by a few Gacha content creators recently have ruffled some feathers in a way that I personally think is related to this topic.
I'll keep my discussion on these two content creators entirely related to the video and entirely related to the incident. Just a bit of a brief disclaimer from me on my end.
So let's get into it. This is going to be the difference between a fact and an opinion, why it matters, and how I think it is one of the biggest reasons that everyone cannot stop fighting in the Gacha space.
Subscribe!
X, I'm gonna be honest. I think you need some background music. I think you need some background music in your introduction because this shit comes out of nowhere and it kind of hurt me. I think it kind of hurt my viewers too. You need some sort of build up to this. Because holy shit, there was no music at all before this, and now it's just oh my god.
We'll start simple, maybe even arguably too simple, just to make sure we're on the same page. I promise though, this is going somewhere interesting. A fact is something that is known to be objectively true, that can be proven via quantitative or measurable data. It is objectively true that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and it is objectively true that Genshin Impact was released on September 28th of 2020 in the US.
And it's objectively true that this game sucks balls. Sorry, that's actually an opinion. I jumped the gun there.
These are facts. An opinion is a judgment that an individual creates around a particular topic that is not necessarily based upon quantitative or measurable data, but usually more so on personal preference, experience, and realistically, bias. Personally, I prefer Wuthering Waves over other Gacha games. Some people prefer Zenless Zone Zero, or Genshin, or Honkai Star Rail, or PGR, or Cookie Run Kingdom.
And everybody that doesn't fall into the Wuthering Waves category is stupid. That's also an opinion.
Those are all opinions. While some people might be upset with me for simply stating my preference for Wuthering Waves, most will shrug their shoulders and think, well, fair enough. Now, what if I say Wuthering Waves is better than other Gacha games, or alternatively, I think Wuthering Waves is better than other Gacha games? I would expect this to ruffle a lot more feathers. But why is that? Well, that's because there is a difference between a statement of fact and a statement of opinion. When you're making a statement of opinion, you'll use connotative language that is less definitive and more based around personal values and perspectives. Conversely, you'll know you're making a statement of fact if you're using objective or denotative language, implying that what you're saying is an absolute capital T truth.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing a little bit over here is a bit of education in the gacha space. A bit of a English 101. And, for some content creators who are on the record for not having English as one of their first languages, and that's, an excuse that we've been backed into several times when it comes to some of our spicy takes. Perhaps it's time to learn, buddy. Perhaps it's time to learn. Especially if we're communicating with a mostly English audience.
The tricky part is a statement of fact does not necessarily contain an actual fact. You can state your personal opinion as if it is a fact, and that's where the problem often lies. When I say I prefer Wuthering Waves over other gacha games, that is both an opinion and a statement of opinion. When I say Wuthering Waves is better than other gacha games, that is my opinion since it can't be proved empirically, but I'm also stating it as if it is a fact. But many of us have a bad habit of saying those opinions as if they are objectively true, and that causes friction. Now we get into the problem of most gacha community discourse. The reality is, in the process of consuming media, very few things we talk about are actually facts.
I think the main takeaway of this thesis over here is that, well, ladies and gentlemen, the gacha community in general, we're not really the sharpest tools in the shed. And having to get into this whole, oh, you misread my opinion. You misread what I was actually saying. And so my original take is actually fine. You all just read it the wrong way. Well, this is the thing, right? If we have experience in the content creation space, if we have years of background communicating to this type of audience, this is the thing, guys. We know the audience at that point. We know how they're going to receive things, and wording things in a way that we know are going to be, well, inflammatory in a sense, and then trying to back into, well, it was actually you guys that were wrong. This is the thing, right? You can communicate things in a way that is palatable for a 5-year-old, and you can also communicate things in a way that's palatable for an adult audience. And using the adult audience language with a 5-year-old and then blaming the 5-year-old for not understanding, that's kind of your fault. Let's be honest.
Very few things we talk about are actually facts. 99% of everything we say about these games are just opinions. I'm going to use the Pokey Red New tweet as an example of this, mostly because it's relatively simple and because a lot of people are currently familiar with it. I want to be clear that this is in no way an attempt for me to shit on those two creators or put them down.
Too late. Already happened. Too late. My opinion is you've already defecated all over them. Simply by stating facts about the matter, you've already shit all over them. It's already done. It's over.
I'm just going to use this situation as an example to illustrate what I want to talk about, since this is a topic that can really easily get into the weeds and get overly complicated without a solid anchor. So here is the statement in question. I think Zenless Zone Zero's combat is a lot better than Wuthering Waves'. Now, is this a statement of fact or a statement of opinion? It's actually trickier than you might think. Saying I think at the beginning of the statement obviously implies that it's an opinion, but the rest of the statement, Zenless Zone Zero's combat is a lot better than Wuthering Waves, ultimately is a statement of fact due to the use of definitive language. Slapping on an I think or an in my opinion before or after a statement of fact doesn't make it not a statement of fact. This is because the statement is better, rather than something that is clearly more of an opinionated statement, like I enjoy Zenless Zone Zero's combat better, or the combat feels more exciting to me, or something similar to that. So what's the problem with that? Why were so many people upset about this tweet? And why the hell are you even talking about this, Hex Juice?
Hex, maybe you should start doing maybe on stream you should start doing English lessons, English comprehension lessons. That way you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. First, you can do gacha content, and then you can also help your audience prepare for the SATs. Maybe they'll get a reading score above 600 or something like that after watching a couple of your streams. See, you can do both.
The answer is because the way we talk about things matters. The framing we use to get our thoughts out into the world determines how people will respond to us. The thing about opinions is they're like assholes. Everyone has them. Facts should ultimately be uncontroversial because they're essentially agreed upon by everyone, because they're experienced to be true by everyone or proven to be true by science. It's not controversial for me to say that Wuthering Waves is an open world, action-based RPG gacha game because that's a fact. It's not controversial for me to say that about Genshin Impact. It is an open world action-based RPG gacha game. It's arguable, however, to say which one is the better open world action-based RPG gacha game because it's not, technically speaking, a fact, even if I really like Wuthering Waves and really don't like Genshin Impact. Our opinions are guided by our values and experiences. I love playing Wuthering Waves because the exploration, especially in 2.0, is a lot of fun for me. It feels dynamic and smooth and exciting. The characters have designs that I really enjoy and I love to play because the combat fits my personal preferences, and the developer, Kuro Games, listens to the community by incorporating feedback in a way that makes the game more enjoyable for me to play with every new patch.
You want to know an objective fact about this when it comes to Genshin Impact and Wuthering Waves? Genshin Impact has had more quality of life after Wuthering Waves' release than they've had in the past 4 years of implementation. There you go. That's a fact. Ever since WoW released, Genshin suddenly released maybe 2 to 3 to 4 times the quality of life than they ever have before in the past 4 years. That's a fact. But every single person is just going to be like, oh, it's just a coincidence. No, it's just a coincidence. It's a coincidence. Shut up.
I dislike Genshin because the exploration feels clunky and frustrating, especially when stamina depletes when I'm running outside of combat. The character designs have appealed to me less and less over time as they feel repetitive and often lack a color contrast that I prefer. The elemental combat system feels too simplistic for me, and the developer rarely incorporates community feedback or does so in a way that feels unsatisfying or frustrating to me.
I think this video is just shitting on Genshin Impact now. This is kind of based. This video has just turned based. It's now become just shitting on Genshin Impact, the video. And now we're just using the whole opinion versus fact framing to simply shit on the game. I love it. I love it. She's teaching us the right way to shit. This is like potty training. This is like potty training for the community.
However, these are all based on my personal preferences and personal values. I prefer exploration with more freedom of movement and character designs that are less color saturated and more mature. I personally value combat that feels like it has more skill expression and developers that consistently look to please their players. Another person just might not see it that way though. They might have completely different values or value certain things more or less than I do.
And this is the thing, all these values that Hex Juice have over here, this is for a mature audience. My opinion is that if you don't share these values, you're a little fucking baby. You're a little babby that plays shitty games. And if you don't find these to be important in the games that you play, grow up. Literally grow up. And if you're an adult, 25, 26, 27, 28 plus, and these are not your values, mentally grow up.
Someone who really enjoys Genshin might genuinely enjoy the exploration of the game and not mind that the stamina meter depletes when they're out of combat. They might really value the flashiness and fun behind the elemental system or might not value combat with more complexity. They might have a personal preference for more colorful character designs. As far as the developers are concerned, another person might not see the need for the improvements I would want from Hoyoverse for Genshin Impact, or the lack of player feedback being incorporated might not inhibit their personal enjoyment of the game.
If this statement applies to you, right here at the bottom one, the game doesn't need improvements or still enjoy Genshin without player feedback, get help. Seek guidance. Get some help. You're stupid.
These are also personal opinions based on personal values and preference. I might disagree with them, and they might think I have some major L takes, but none of these statements were facts. You'll notice that I continued on here to speak on Genshin Impact versus Wuthering Waves, and not Zenless Zone Zero combat versus Wuthering Waves combat. There's a reason for that. The games, in my opinion, are not similar enough in their combat for the comparison to be useful or interesting. While they're both action-based, they're meant to appeal to totally different preferences. Wuthering Waves has very fluid combat with a lot of strategy involved. Many units can be played in a couple different ways, and teams can be structured around them with a lot of variety. This brings a lot of skill and playstyle expression into the game. For me, it even sometimes feels close to a Souls-like, though it's obviously not exactly the same, due to its precise dodge and parry timings, especially when battling holograms. Zenless Zone Zero is a lot faster with the combo switch system. It's very flashy, with big impact frames and great sound design. The parry system is much less precise, but very satisfying due to the animations and the sound cues. Stylistically, it's also very appealing.
And this game has a higher chance of giving you arthritis due to the repetitive left mouse button clicking. Let's not forget to leave out that one.
It has a relatively lower skill ceiling, but there are plenty of ways to play the units and teams with hidden combos and tech that a player can choose to engage with or almost entirely ignore. One person might actually enjoy both, simply because they fulfill totally different desires for combat in a game. and a lot of people enjoy different kinds of combat. I personally like Wuthering Waves, Elden Ring, and Cookie Run Kingdom all for their combat, all of which are very unique in their appeal.
What is this fucking Cookie Run Kingdom shilling? Where's this even coming from? Show some fucking gameplay. Show some footage of that shit. Hey, back it up. Back it up.
So, comparing the combat of Zenless Zone Zero and Wuthering Waves feels really silly to me. It's like apples and oranges. Maybe you think Wuthering Waves' combat is better because it has higher complexity than Zenless Zone Zero's, but that's because you personally value complex combat, just like someone might prefer the crunch and sweetness of an apple. Someone else might enjoy the flashiness and lower complexity of Zenless because it feels fun to them and they don't always enjoy more difficult combat, just like someone prefers the tanginess and juiciness of an orange. Personally, I like Wuthering Waves combat better. And I am also a big fan of oranges, but that isn't science. That's just my opinion. It's also okay to say that something isn't very good or acknowledges flaws and still enjoy it. Love and Deep Space's combat system is not very good. I'm pretty sure that could actually be like an objective fact, game design-wise, or at least most people would probably agree with me. However, I still like the game a lot and recommend anyone who likes hot men to play it because it's fun for a lot of other reasons.
Hey, not a Gunner game though. Not a Gunner game though. Right? Totally not a Gunner game. Guys, if you don't think Love and D-Space is a Gunner game, I think there's something wrong with you. I think you have a few screws loose. Because what the fuck is this?
And the combat can be completed almost entirely through autoplay. An example I've often given is that reality television is not exactly the most enriching media experience, but I enjoy a bit of brain rot on my second monitor when I'm clearing the endgame in my gacha games or, I don't know, writing a script on YouTube. Is it that good? No, but it's enjoyable to me and so I like it. A lot of people love Sharknado, even though it's considered to be a really poorly made movie. In the same vein, something can be really well made and generally agreed upon to be good, and it's still okay for you to not enjoy it. I adore Hades, and it's generally a beloved game with excellent reviews. But that's not gonna mean shit to you if you don't like the roguelite genre, Greek mythology, or rock music. That doesn't mean that all opinions are valid or immune to criticism, though. If my opinion is that all gachas with a 50-50 should instead make it a 10-90 because I like the risk of gambling and a 50-50 isn't enough for me, maybe I should just go to a casino. Or, I don't know, get help for my gambling addiction. Many people would be concerned by that opinion because it completely spits in the face of my personal interests and the personal interests of other players. To those that value being pro-consumer, there's certainly a debate to be had about making gacha games more predatory. It doesn't benefit anyone, and therefore that opinion should be looked at critically.
Power creep.
The same can be said if an opinion is based on misinformation. For example, if you value combat in gacha games and would never consider playing Love and Deep Space because it's bad, because it's all dry humping and no combat, newsflash, the game does actually have combat. I didn't know that nobody knew that until recently, though obviously the game is still not for everybody. The point of all of this is to say that it is okay to have opinions, but the way we frame and engage with our opinions matters.
Guys, I think I'm gonna have to put out a new tweet. Love and D-Space's combat is better than Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, and Genshin Impact combined. Wanna know why? Because it has an auto button. Didn't see that one coming, did you guys?
Those with very bizarre mental states would be upset to find that Mr. Pokey or Rednu prefer the combat in Zenless Zone Zero to Wuthering Waves. Most people understand that an opinion is based around personal preferences. It can feel upsetting, however, when someone states an opinion as if it is a fact. Should it feel so genuinely upsetting to the point that people are freaking out and sending death threats to people, like in a lot of situations in Gacha? Obviously not. These are just games after all. In a perfect world, other people's opinions on Wuthering Waves or Zenless Zone Zero would be completely irrelevant to everyone. If you yourself have a hard time coping with someone disliking your favorite game, it might be time to take a break, look inward, and maybe even touch some grass. However, when we state our opinion as if it is a fact, it will create friction. Not only because people will disagree, but also because you won't have objective data to back it up. Just more of your own opinions, which just creates this cycle of endless arguing. It also creates an environment where everyone is constantly trying to prove themselves right when it's really just a bunch of random people yapping about their personal preferences, especially in this particular case. It's fantastic to debate about your values, ask questions, be critical, and talk about your interests with others. It's actually one of my favorite things. I love being loud and opinionated on the internet. What I've realized more and more is that if I want to be heard, I have to understand that not everyone values the same things as me. I have very strong beliefs about the predatory practices of Hoyoverse and a lot of gacha developers in general, but no one will listen to me if I make them feel stupid for not agreeing with me or not understanding my position without explaining it to them.
This is an easy way to do it, and a very easy way to get around it. Reinforce all of your opinions with facts. Genshin Impact's exploration sucks ass compared to Wuthering Waves because you cannot run up walls in Genshin Impact without paying money. And no, Kachina doesn't count. Shut up.
Maybe this should be common sense, but I've realized how much I've missed the mark on this in a lot of my older content. This is also something I think many gacha content creators, gacha game players, and people in general fail to keep in mind. The point is to debate about ideas, acknowledge the good and bad in these games, and have an open market to speak our opinions on the internet. When we state our opinions as if they are objectively true, we cut off the ability to really engage with others' opinions and for them to genuinely engage with ours. Now, if you want to keep stating your opinions as facts, go for it. The internet thrives off of that kind of divisiveness, and it'll certainly get you a lot of engagement on Twitter. Life is hard, and the world is chaotic, and really anyone who gets that mad over your opinion kind of has their own shit to worry about, especially when it's about gacha games. However, if you're like me and struggle to understand why it feels like sometimes no one will ever hear you out, even if you're trying to be reasonable, maybe try to slow down. Consider how you would like others to engage with your statement and go from there.
I think the takeaway here for me is you have an admission that you're doing, right? When you decide to engage with the gacha community. When you decide to put a hot take out there, you are basically understanding that, well, these individuals are, for a lack of a better term, and like I said before, they're not particularly going to be the most intelligent people ever. And if you're gonna go in and, let's just go ahead and say this, right? Expect an intelligent response from a community that is known for not having intelligence, right? They're supposed to read between the lines of what you're saying and reach your true intentions. Well, again, you're speaking like an adult to 5-year-olds, and that usually doesn't end very well. They're either going to be confused or offended. And if you're a creator, right, that has years of experience in the space, you know you're just rage baiting at that point. You know you're getting the response that you wanted, and then doing some whole Eisen, well, actually, I knew it all along. Look at you silly gooses. There's something wrong with you guys. You know that's not the right way to go about it. You know people are going to make fun of you after that one.
Your delivery and framing will affect how people will respond to you. If you want a massive divisive reaction based on people's feelings around gacha tribalism, there's plenty of examples on my channel you can look at if you don't mind getting the hate. If you want people to have the chance to hear you and see your side, even if they don't end up agreeing with you, state your opinions as opinions. Give your reasoning for why you feel that way so others can understand, and consider not spending so much time on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment below on your thoughts about this yapathon. I thought about this video for a really long time, and it feels really good to finally get it all out, so I hope you enjoyed. I'll see y'all next time. Bye!
She spent a good portion of this video just taking an absolute shit on Genshin Impact, and I gotta say, it was pretty based. And the whole, like, English lesson, the whole community lesson that she had as well, also pretty based. I do have to say, you know, that whole part about, like, relief of getting this off the chest, hey, makes a ton of sense to me, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? A lot of people do like using the shield of, oh, it was just my opinion. And let's be honest here, guys. You're not wording it like that. And just simply putting an I think, or I'm aware, or my thoughts on the matter are, who cares? That's like basically putting on a condom that's like 17 sizes too large, doing some stuff, and then wondering why it didn't work. That's basically what the situation is. So just make a little bit more sense with your takes, a little bit more sense with your wording, and then just move forward from there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you all think. Peace out.